Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
Is Ohtani already the best ever? The Browns stadium drama that Bills fans know all too well, some New York sports headlines, plus the most interesting thing that I've noticed so far in the NBA season. It's all straight ahead on a fresh edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. Hey, welcome into a fresh episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. Lots to do this first episode of the week. Yes, we did not have an episode earlier this week. I was unfortunately out of action dealing with the laryngitis, lying on my deathbed, coughing my head off. It's that time of year, so hopefully we'll have no coughing fits in the course of this episode, but I can't make any promises. All right, so we got a lot of stuff to get into for today's edition of Gordon Damer on Sports. But before we get too deep into it, Knick ticket giveaway right off the top. Knicks and Bucks, November 28th. You want your chance to win a couple of tickets to go see the Knicks at the Garden. We've got your chance. All you have to do, very simple, follow me on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Gordon Damer. Find the tweet that I put out about the Knick ticket giveaway. Repost that to your followers. And then finally, just subscribe to the show on YouTube. Very simple. Those three things, and you have entered for your chance to win Knicks and Bucks tickets for November 28th, and good luck to everyone out there. All right, so we got a lot of stuff to get into today on the episode. A little New York sports, a little outside New York sports, some upstate New York sports, a lot of stuff to talk about. But let's start off with the World Series. World Series could very well come to an end tonight. Dodgers and Blue Jays back in Toronto. And, you know, it's so funny to me that even people who watch baseball just don't get baseball. I don't understand how this continually happens. Even people who cover baseball, they don't seem to understand how the sport works. So the Dodgers win that marathon game 3. And if you stayed up to the end of it, God bless you. 18 innings. I was out at about 1 a.m. I said, you know what? I got things to do. One of these teams is going to win the game. I'll find out in the morning. I did DVR it. But after the Blue Jays lose that game, the amount of people, oh, well, that's it for the Blue Jays. They can't survive that gut punch. They lose Springer, the injury to him, you know, just the lingering factor of game 3. How are the Blue Jays ever going to be able to combat? They had to win that game. And then they go out and win game 4. They beat Ohtani in the process. And then to prove that that wasn't a fluke, they go out in game 5, score 2 runs right in the first inning. And really, it didn't feel like they were ever threatened in that game 5 win. So now they're 1 win away from winning the World Series. Baseball, yes, it is the World Series, but each game has no bearing on the next game. Each game is separate, and I don't understand why we can't just recognize that, because it's pretty obvious if you've watched baseball for a while. There is really no I know it feels like for fans, well, how are they ever going to overcome that in 24 hours? Well, they figured it out because they're baseball players, and this is what they do for a living. So tonight, Jays go for the clincher, and there's been a question out there during this World Series. And the question is Shohei Ohtani already the greatest player in the history of baseball? And it kind of sounds like, you know, one of those things. It's a sports hot take, right? A talking point, which is a complete prisoner of the moment that has no perspective or any history for the game, that's been around for more than 100 years. You know, the fact that some guy who's, you know, played 7-8 years could already be the best player in the game. It sounds like one of those sports show hot takes. The only problem with it is it's kind of true, mainly because the guy is in a completely different category. Who else are you comparing him to? You know, the fact that this guy can do what he can do and do it at the highest of levels, this is not a novelty. He kind of ends the argument. He's one of the greatest hitters and he's one of the greatest pitchers. Not number one on either one, but he's doing both at a top 5, top 10 level with zero competition. So we use that term unicorn a lot. Oh, this guy is one of a kind. He's the only guy that deserves that title. Now, the only caveat I will say is, does it turn out that Ohtani eventually is the test case and other people start following his lead. Maybe, but I understand that it feels like people are a prisoner of the moment, but how can you really argue that this guy is the most talented guy and the best guy? Now, I've seen some pushback on that, and I understand why. Especially in baseball, it always feels like people want to pump the brakes. Derek Jeter kind of pumped the brakes the other day and said you can't say that Ohtani's the greatest player until he's done it longer, that in baseball you need to have longevity to kind of earn that title, that longevity is what matters when you're talking about a great career or the greatest career. But with all due respect to Derek Jeter, that's not the question that we're asking here. The question that we're not talking about who's had the greatest career. We're talking about the best player. And those two conversations are two separate things. And I could understand why somebody doesn't want to admit to Ohtani being the best player, wants to focus it on the career, because that's a different conversation. You can kind of spin it off that. Best, in this sense, means in any given moment. If every player in the history of baseball, in the history of the sport, were at their peak, who would be the one guy that you would pick first? And I think that at this point, the answer is pretty clearly Shohei Ohtani. I mean, who else? It's not just that he's elite at one thing, he's elite at everything. So there's nobody else to kind of put in the conversation. Now, if this were a novelty, if he pitched, but he wasn't a great pitcher and he was just a hitter, okay, maybe that would be one thing. But he is a top 5 hitter and a top 5 pitcher at the same time. Think about how absurd that is. If there were a movie that featured a guy who was the best pitcher in the sport and the best hitter in the sport, that movie would be a comedy. It would not be based in reality. It would not be a drama, because that one part of the story would seem preposterous. And there are players who spend their entire lives trying to master one of those skills, and Ohtani has mastered both of them. And this is not just a singular season. If this were just that he were doing this year and he was not going to do it again, okay, maybe then. But the dude is his own ace on the team, and he's also the best hitter on the team. It's like if Patrick Mahomes was not just Patrick Mahomes, but he was also the best pass rusher on the Kansas City Chiefs. That's what I don't even see where any other comparisons are. And you can bring up other great players. There have certainly been better hitters, but in terms of players, yeah, there's 5 tool guys. Willie Mays, King Griffey Jr., Mike Trout. They're all 5 category guys, 5 tooled guys. Ohtani's a 10 tool guy. He's doing 2 completely different jobs, and he's doing them at an MVP level and doing it at a time where it's tougher than it's ever been before. I get it. This might not be your favorite era of baseball, but it's clearly the toughest era. Pitching is tougher. Hitting is smarter. Everything is, it's poured through analytics. Everything is designed to expose weaknesses of players, and yet Ohtani somehow is dominating both sides of the ball. This does not happen. And for anyone who wants to go back to Babe Ruth, well, Babe Ruth did it. It was 100 years ago. The game was not global like it is now. The competition was not anywhere close to as deep as it was. The travel, the technology, the focus on it all, it was completely different. It was a completely different sport. So yes, still Babe Ruth is one of the great in the history of the game, and you can only measure him against his peers. But what Ohtani is doing now against the best players in the world. So I get that it sounds like a hot take, because hot takes are designed to provoke you and gain engagement. But saying that Ohtani is not the best player, it's not some kind of wild take. It's the logical conclusion to what we're watching. When you can be both a Cy Young candidate and an MVP level hitter at the same time in the same season, that kind of ends the debate. So for Derek Jeter, he's right about the greatest career, because Ohtani almost certainly, I don't think, is going to reach 700 home runs. I know he's certainly not going to win 300 games. And if you want to talk about the greatest career, that will be a debatable conversation to have whenever Ohtani's career is over and we can look back and gauge it based on the numbers and all that type of stuff. But best player, that's not about time. That's about talent. And Shohei Ohtani is clearly the most talented player individually talented player who has ever lived. Full stop. End of discussion. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Cleveland Browns. You might be saying, why the heck would we ever talk about the Cleveland Browns? Well, we're not talking about the team this year. It's been another rough season for the Cleveland Browns, which is really not that surprising. Since rejoining the NFL in 1999, the Browns in 27 seasons have made the playoffs 3 times and have won exactly 1 playoff game. And it does not look like they'll be adding to that total this year. That much is for sure. But there is some positive news for Browns fans. Not in the current tense, but in the future, because the team is planning on building a new stadium. They have announced a little while ago that they have plans to build a new domed stadium in an area called Brook Park, which is about 16 miles away from where they currently play their games. And look, with these stadium deals in any kind of league, there's always some back and forth between state officials and team officials and the league and all that type of stuff. But at least for now, it seems like this thing is kind of on the track to get a new stadium done for the Cleveland Browns by 2029. So that's some good news. Or is it good news? Because while the Cleveland Stadium situation has its own unique issues for sure, what you see a lot of times is there's some common threads for fan bases whenever teams announce new stadiums. And the thread is generally that the fan bases are the biggest losers when the wheeling and dealing is done. And if Brown fans want any idea of what to kind of expect down the road, they might want to talk to maybe some Buffalo Bills fans for what they're going through right now. Because Buffalo and Cleveland, a lot of similarities in that they're 2 cities that bleed football. The Bills obviously have the Bills Mafia, who are a loyal and proud team. Even when the team has not been very good, they show up year in and year out. But next season, that same fan base is going to face something that might sound familiar to Browns fans a little further down the road. See, the Buffalo Bills, they're moving into a brand new stadium right across the street. Price tag, $2.1 billion in Orchard Park. And you might be saying to yourself, wow, what can you buy for $2.1 billion in Orchard Park? Well, on the surface, the building looks and reads unbelievably. All the modern amenities, the bells and whistles, better fan experience. I was watching how they did one video about how the stadium was built to reduce wind for fans in the stands in Buffalo. So it's going to be an absolutely incredible building, which you would think for $2.1 billion it should be. But when you look across the fan base and hear from fans about what the next step is for them, it's kind of a cautionary tale because the new Bills Stadium is pricing a lot of fans out of the experience. First off, the new stadium, $2.1 billion, $850 million of that was paid for in taxpayer money. That is the largest public subsidy for a stadium anywhere in the U.S. and anywhere in U.S. history. And the kicker is that the money was never put up for a public vote. There was no input from the public before the state decided to pay for it. Now, that deal between the Bills and New York State was kind of stuck in neutral when Andrew Cuomo was the governor, but when he stepped down and Kathy Hochul took over as governor, things all of a sudden got fast-tracked. And it's amazing how it did all that without a single vote on it. Now, the Bills owners, Terry and Kim Pegula, they're worth just about $7 billion. These things always kind of fluctuate. But they're richer today than ever before. In fact, the team's value since they bought the team has skyrocketed so much, they could have paid for the new stadium out of pocket just with the gains in the franchise value over the last decade. That's how much the value of the team has increased since they've owned the team. Now, they didn't do that. The taxpayers foot a big portion of the bill, and that's not all that unusual. That generally is what happens. But after all that public money, fans are now being told, well, yes, but if you want to come inside the new stadium, that's going to cost you some more. Now, letting the public have a say is not always a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It's about a 50-50 shot. But what you see with these stadium-type deals is when they're done behind closed doors, well, they get done, but the fans are always and the public are always the ones who kind of get screwed over on the deal. And I got to be honest, as a sports fan, the more I cover sports business stories, it makes you want to be, I don't understand how you could be a sports business fan and a sports fan at the same time. Because as if the $850 million in public money was not enough, now fans are being asked to buy PSLs or personal seat licenses. That's not a new concept. A PSL is the idea that you're going to buy the right to buy tickets before you actually buy tickets. Try to explain that to somebody who's never heard of a PSL before. It sounds like absolute lunacy. And I got to admit, the first guy who came up with the idea of PSLs, that guy was a business genius. We're not going to sell them the seat just yet. We're going to sell them the right to buy the seat. Now, teams will say, well, it's like a country club, right? You buy an initiation fee, and then you have to pay yearly dues. I don't know. To me, it sounds like paying for the same thing twice. But look, Bills fans, those PSLs, they run anywhere from a couple of $1,000s from the worst seats to $50,000 per seat for club-level seats. Now, it's a one-time thing. You don't have to pay it every single year, but that's before the ticket prices, which, in case you're wondering, with the new stadium, yeah, in most cases, those ticket prices have also doubled. So a ton of fans who have been going to games in Buffalo for years have seen their cost of experience quadruple. And the new stadium has priced many fans out of their fandom. Fans who have had season tickets, not for years, for decades. They live in Buffalo. What else are they going to do? They're realizing, you know what? I can't afford this anymore. And look, nobody has a right to be able to go to games, but it is kind of heartbreaking. You know, Bills have one of the most blue-collar fan bases in the league, and it's not the richest market. In fact, actually, outside of Green Bay, it's the smallest market in the NFL. And people say, well, Buffalo's in New York. Buffalo is in New York technically. It's nowhere close to New York City. It's not Los Angeles. It's a smaller working-class community that's kind of looked to the Bills. That's kind of why people root for the Bills, because it's that one area's source of pride through some very tough economic times, which is basically since the Bills came into existence in the 60s. And now the fan base that has kept the team alive through thick and thin, they're being kind of priced out of the experience. And even the ones who have not been priced out, it's been, you know, they're moving pretty far back in that stadium. And the irony is the new stadium is actually going to be smaller than the old stadium. You'd figure, oh, you're building this brand new stadium. It looks enormous. No, that's by design. Owners they don't want more fans. They want the right fans. They want the rich fans. One example I saw was that the Celtics Stadium in Boston, 2 seats on the floor. For that price, you could buy an entire section in the upper deck. So for the sports owner, the logic is pretty simple. Why would I sell 5 $100 tickets when I can sell 1 $1,000 tickets and a premium experience to someone else? So it really does make you, you know, as a sports fan, kind of scratch your head. And where does this leave sports fans in this entire thing? And how does this impact Cleveland? Well, the Browns, they're the next in line for a new stadium, and I don't know how much public money is going to be or what the breakdown will be, but the team is also is already talking about this massive project. It's going to cost billions of dollars, and what you see and experience is it's not mostly going to come from the owner itself. Now, Browns fans, I'm sure the diehard fans are going to be excited thinking about, you know, what it's going to look like, and the team has put up pictures of what their expectations are, and talking about a new future and a sense of pride and a new stadium. But here's the thing, and fans should know this at this point. Don't miss the fine print. Watch closely who's paying for what, and ask whether or not your tax dollars are going to be the one footing the bill, and whether you're even going to be able to afford seats by the time they actually build the stadium, because the prices are not going down, that's for sure. And because if Buffalo's story tells us anything, it's that these deals are not built for fans. They will portray it as that, hey, this is for a better fan experience. We want to make sure our fans have the greatest experience in the world. Yeah, that's not what they're looking to do. Now, I will at least say on the bright side, the PSL thing, for all of its absurdity, at least you're taking money from actually people who want to give it to you, right? Like maybe they don't want to give it to you. Maybe that's the wrong term. But at least they're having a decision to make, do I want to buy this or do I not want to buy this? When you're taking taxpayer money, especially without a vote at all, that seems like the most unfair thing that you possibly can do. But it just shows you, and I think there's a lot of similarities between Buffalo and Cleveland. The cost of being an NFL fan, of being a sports fan, it's going up. And teams are looking to shake every last dollar out of you. Now, the Cleveland Stadium, that's going to be a dome stadium. And I'm sure that they're going to portray it as, hey, you know, a controlled environment for fans, no more chilly weather outside. That's not why they're doing it. It's going to cost more, and it's not about fan comfort. It's about doing better business, right? A dome stadium means you can hold events year-round in Cleveland. You don't have to worry about the weather outside. You can hold concerts. You can hold college games. You can hold conventions. And, oh, yeah, In a cold area, you're going to need a dome to be able to host a Super Bowl, which is a massive payday for the owners. So that's the pattern. And another part of the Cleveland thing that's really puzzling, the Browns' current stadium is only 26 years old. That's not ancient. It's not crumbling around them. It's younger. It's newer than more than half the stadiums in the league. But look, this money is out there, and these owners, they want every last dollar. And it does feel like, as we've talked about in the past, that the NFL is kind of bulletproof. There's nothing that the NFL can do to shake the popularity of the NFL. And while we talked with Andrew Marchand in the last episode, no line goes straight up. I don't know, man. It kind of feels like with the NFL, that this line is going straight up. And if Buffalo is any indication, the answers are pretty clear for the people of Cleveland. Taxpayers will probably pay at least a portion of it, and fans will definitely pay through PSLs. And oh yeah, by the way, the Browns have put out a poll for their fan base of whether or not they would be willing to buy PSLs for the new stadium. And at last check I saw, it was overwhelmingly negative. Are the owners so delusional that they thought fans would be like, no, we want to pay a second time for the same thing? It's almost like, it feels like that scene in Goodfellas when the restaurant owner goes in partner with Paulie. End of the week, screw you, pay me. Got struck by lightning, screw you, pay me. That's the way that the NFL owners, it feels like, look at their fan bases, and they want to squeeze every last dollar out of them. And if it comes to a new stadium, that they are going to try to find a way to to separate you from your money. So unfortunately for a lot of the Buffalo Bills fans, this is their final season watching games in person. And in future, they'll be having the at-home experience. And Cleveland, you might be next, because be careful of what that price tag will look like, because chances are by the time that new stadium is built, if Buffalo is any example, you also might not be able to afford the ticket. All right, let's hit on a couple of New York sports stories that have kind of been floating out there for the last day or two that I wanted to hit on. Let's start with the Giants, because apparently now we're not even allowed to question Brian Daboll's job security without people losing their mind. Now, look, on the last episode, I said, and I'll say it again, as long as the Giants win a representative amount of games, I don't know what the exact number is, but if they win their share of games, Brian Daboll is going to be the head coach next year. That's not my opinion. I'm not saying what I would do. I'm putting myself in the mind of John Mara and Giant ownership. If they go out there and they win their 6-7 games, he is going to be back. The quarterback looks good, and I don't think they're going to want to upset the apple cart. But people are acting like it's insane to even question Daboll's future, as if he's the only coach on earth who could make Jackson Dart succeed. Can we pump the brakes a little bit on that? The Giants have won 2 games. They should have won more and have not, because of bad coaching. You're telling me it's an automatic job guarantee? I would just say, wait a second, how has he got a guaranteed job when everyone wants Aaron Glenn fired and he's got 1 win? Daboll's got 2. Everybody wants Glenn fired. He's in year 1 with one of the worst rosters in football and does not have a quarter. He just got here and people want him fired. Not at the end of the season, immediately. How does that make any sense? Again, if the Giants go out there and handle their business with their new young quarterback who does look like the real deal, and you win 6 games, 7 games, okay, fine, bring him back. But if the Giants go out and win 2 more games the rest of the way, they finish at 4-13 or 5-12, you're signing up for more of that after 4 years of it? And the whole, well, but he found the quarterback. I'm sorry, that argument does not hold much water to me. Because if he's truly the only coach that can make the quarterback function, well then, I don't know that you've necessarily found your guy. I think you've just found a system that kind of props him up. You've won 2 games. You got to go. It's the NFL, and it's not for long if you don't win games. So Brian Daboll, the story is not written yet. It's certainly trending in the right direction, but he is absolutely still on the hot seat. All right, so that's the football thing. The second thing is the Yankee story. The World Series could wrap up tonight, as I mentioned, and then it's on to the offseason, which for a Yankee team, a lot of questions. And one of them that's been floated out there, I don't think it's an actual question for the team, But you have to fill time, and that is the question of, do you pursue Cody Bellinger or do you pursue Kyle Tucker? And the appeal of Tucker, he's younger, he's more consistent at the plate. And if the argument is simply who is the better player, I would say Tucker. And he's probably the better player right now, and he probably trend better because he is a couple years younger. And that's a big thing when you're signing somebody to a long-term contract. But here's the thing. You're not building a fantasy team. You're building a baseball team with all the things that go into that. Contracts, flexibility, fit. And the contract, that's a big stumbling block. Kyle Tucker, according to reports, is going to get $400 million. I had to check to make sure I'm thinking of the same guy, right? Kyle Tucker, $400 million. Cody Bellinger is going to cost you half of that. Tucker's going to give you, yes, some long-term offensive upside. Maybe has not reached his peak yet. But Bellinger gives you defensive versatility. He's a better fit. He can play center field. He can play first base. He's been here. He's not a guy that's going to melt in the spotlight of New York. Now, look, I'm not a huge Bellinger guy. And if he ends up going someplace else, I'm not going to be heartbroken because I pointed this out before. The Yankees have put together this team now where they have several guys who do not perform in October. And Cody Bellinger is one of them. He's had a lot of opportunities in the playoffs, and his OPS in October is about 650. Now, Tucker is he's not exactly Mr. October either. He's not exactly a playoff killer. But if we're talking about realistic, and I don't know that this is a realistic thing that the Yankees are actually weighing. I think even if they lost Cody Bellinger, I don't think that they're going out and signing Kyle Tucker to $400 million. But if you're giving me the option between the two, I think that Cody Bellinger is a better fit. And I like that because then I can take whatever other money I have and fill other holes. The big thing the Yankees have to figure out is how to build a complete team. They have not been able to do that. And they have to fix their offense. There's no question about that. But I think just overpaying simply for one guy, I don't know that takes care of it in the long term. Also, I don't think that another thing that is not real, but it gets mentioned, the Yankees are never in 100 million years going to sign Pete Alonso. Can John Heyman stop trying to do Scott Boris's business by floating it out? Well, the Yankees might be interested in Pete Alonso. That will never happen. Pete Alonso will probably get a contract someplace, but the Yankees are not signing a right-handed power first baseman who's 31 years old, who can't field, can't run, can't hit for average. Stop. That would never happen in a million years. The Yankees have a better chance of signing me than signing Pete Alonso. So stop with those stories because they're ridiculous. At least the Bellinger-Tucker one is fun to kind of debate. Pete Alonso will never be a Yankee. Take it to the bank.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
Okay, finally for this Friday edition of Gordon Damer on Sports, one thing that I've noticed in the NBA, and look, there's a lot of fun things that happen. The NBA regular season takes forever. A lot of it is massively overrated. But there's been fun stories with Wembanyama and the things that are going on with Austin Reeves. But the one thing that I've noticed that I don't think has gotten enough attention so far is what is going on with the Miami Heat offense. Now, look, we're only a little over a week and a half into the regular season, but what Miami's doing on offense is pretty fascinating. Erik Spoelstra has quietly retooled the Heat's entire offense, and they are way faster. They're way more fluid. And their offense does not look like what we were used to in the past. It's no longer built almost exclusively around pick and rolls and everything in the half court. This year, it's all about pace and drive and kick actions and getting the ball into the hands of shooters way earlier in the clock. And the results have been working. Now, again, it's super early on in the season, but it's a stark difference than what we saw from Miami last year. Now, I could not grab the updated stats from last night. They lost to San Antonio last night, and Miami's only 3-2, which might not sound that great. But offensively, 7th in offensive rating, best points per game average in the entire NBA, top 5 in three-pointers made and percentage in the entire NBA. And they're doing this without their best two pure scorers in Tyler Hero and Norman Powell. So you might be thinking to yourself, next question, Well, how did Spoelstra come up with this? Well, he didn't, at least not entirely, because what the Heat are running right now, their offense is actually a variation of what Memphis ran last year. Remember there was that stretch where Memphis looked like, man, they have cracked the code. That Taylor Jenkins, boy, he is a genius. The head coach in Memphis, Taylor Jenkins, wanted to take the pressure off Ja Morant, so he brought in Noah LaRoche, who was a Division III coach who was known for creative, up-tempo offenses, and basically what they did was they built a system that got rid of the pick and roll almost entirely. Grizzlies set the fewest ball screens in the entire NBA last year by a pretty wide range, like by 10 fewer than any other team, and instead they played with early attacks and movement, and for a while, man, again, it looked like they cracked the code. Memphis led the league in scoring. They were top in pace. They led the league in offensive rebounding rate. They were 35-16. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, but didn't Taylor Jenkins get fired last year? Yes, he did get fired last year. He had two problems. A, the league eventually did catch up to what they were doing, right? So the defenses stopped waiting for the screens that were not going to come. So once that was kind of on film and teams adapted, the Grizzlies were not able to adapt to the adaption. And then the other problem was that his star, Ja Morant, was not really on board. He was not a fan. He wanted the ball in his hands, be able to dictate the tempo, and not spread the touches around. So the combination of those two things, the off-the-court frustration and the on-the-court problems as well, things started to spiral, and long story short, Taylor Jenkins was fired, along with his entire staff. But the thing that I think is the interesting takeaway is that Spoelstra was able to see that, take that blueprint, tweak it for his own, and make it Miami's personality. Now, again, it's super early on. Defenses are going to adjust. They adjusted to Memphis. They're going to adjust to Miami. But it's just another reminder of just how brilliant a mind. It's kind of been lost because Miami's not been near the top, but just how brilliant a mind Spoelstra is. Now, is this going to last? I doubt it. But for now, the Heat have absolutely been unpredictable, and it has been fun to watch. And if any coach, they used to say about Don Shula, he can take yours and beat yours with his, and he can take his and beat yours with, he beat you either way. That's kind of like Erik Spoelstra. He's able to take a system that somebody else came up with, perfect it, and make it his own personality, even when the guy who came up with it ended up getting fired in the process. All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you've not already, hit that subscribe button. We'll have more details on the Knicks ticket giveaway on November 28th as the Knicks take on the Bucks. We'll give you a chance to win a pair of tickets to check out the game at MSG. And we'll see you next week for our new episode, only here on Gordon Damer on Sports.